In this video, we're going to explore how to graph square and cube root functions. Let's do a quick little exploration of the differences between these opposite functions. We have an x squared and the square root of x. They're opposite of each other. Let's take a look at the differences between these two. In the y equals x squared, we plug in 0. 0 squared is 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4, and so on. We know that when we have squares, we have a parabola, so we have the same thing on the opposite side. Now let's take a look at what the y equals the square root of x is. So first off, let's try plugging in 0. The square root of 0 is 0. The square root of 1 is 1. So far, this is looking very similar to our parabola. The square root of 2 is not a whole number. The square root of 3 also isn't. But the square root of 4 is 2. Okay? So I notice how I skipped plugging in 2 and 3 because they don't come out nicely. I went over to something that is easy to square root, like the square root of 4. The square root of 5 I can't, 6, 7, those are also not easy to square root because they're not perfect squares. So this is the curve that we get. Now, do we get an opposite curve? Well, we can test that out by asking ourselves, you know, if we want to see if there's a way to get -1, is there a way, is there something that you square root that will give you a -1? Well, no. If you square root, you can only square root a positive number, and then you get a positive answer. So there's no possible way that we can get the other side, okay? So a little note to self. This is not a parabola. So it's only one-sided. The parabola kind of has two sides. The square root does not. So here's the standard form for the functions that have square roots or cube roots or really any other roots. The meaning of each of these pieces is h and k is actually the vertex. They are also the shift in units horizontally and the shift in units vertically. When we want to graph these, it's easier to graph something more simple, like a times square root x. Then we can move that graph over to a new place. Remember, we have a word for this. This is called our mother function. So our mother function, we're going to graph first, and we're going to move it over to the new spot. So let's try graphing something with a cube root. So what's my mother function? My mother function is y equals my mother function is y equals the cube root of x, without the 2, basically. So let's try that. The cube root of 0 is 0. The cube root of 1 is 1. The cube root of 2 I can't do, or 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, but I can do the cube root of 8. The cube root of 8 would be 2. So that's kind of way off of our graph, somewhere way off out over here. Let's try negative numbers. Can I do the cube root of -1? I can. The cube root of -1 is -1. Can I do the cube root of -2? Not easily. But I can do the cube root of -8. That's going to be -2. But also, again, that's kind of way off of this graph. So our parent, our mother graph, our mother function, looks something like that. Kind of this curvy S-looking graph. This is the mother function. And so now I need to move this. How am I going to move it? I'm going to shift it to the right. Because the negative does not mean left, because our formula has a negative, so it actually is a normal 2, which is to the right. So each one of these points needs to move over to the right 2 spots. So move my 0, 0, 1, 2. Move my other points, 1, 2, to the right. My positive 8, positive 2, I can't, it's going to go off my graph. But I can move this one, my negative 8, negative 8, negative 2. So my new graph is something that looks like that. So the green is my answer. Oh, I forgot to move one other point. I'll make that look a little nicer. So the red is my mother function, but my green is actually my answer. Okay, let's try another one. So what is the mother function for this problem here? The mother function is y equals negative 3 square root x. So without the minus 2 and without the plus 1. So let's graph that. Let's plug in 0. Square root of 0 is 0, and 0 times negative 3 is still 0. Let's try 1. The square root of 1 is 1. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Let's try 2. Square root of 2. Well, I can't actually do that. Not easily, not nicely. So I'm going to jump up to a number I can square root. How about we plug in 4? The square root of 4 is 2. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So I see that I can't fit that on my graph. So I'm going to start to draw this. So something like that. So this is my mother function. Now it's time to think about my shift. The negative 2 and the positive 1. So my shift is 2 up and, 2 to the right and 1 up. So I'm going to move each of these points that much. Let's move the first one 2 to the right and 1 up. That's the 0, 0, moved over 2 to the right, 1 up. And my 1 negative 3 is going to move 2 to the right and 1 up. So my new graph starts here and goes like that. Okay, let's take a look at a problem that has an exponent instead of a root sign. We've learned in a recent lesson that our fraction exponents are really just radical or root signs. So let's change this into its root. Y equals the third root of x minus 3 plus 4. So what is the mother function? The mother function for this problem is y equals cube root x. So let's graph that. Plug in 0. 0 cubed is 0. 1 cubed is 1. Negative 1 cubed is negative 1. And so on and so on. We have a picture of this on one of the problems we just did. So if you need to remember what it looks like, here's what you can go back, pause, and take a look. Okay, so there's the mother function. Now it's time to look at what the shifting is. The shifting comes from these 2 points. Since it's a minus 3, that 3 is normal, so it's going to be 3 to the right. And it's plus 4, that's 4 up. So let's shift all these points. I'm going to start out with my negative 8, negative 2. 1, 2, 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So, oops, I'm going to actually have to move these over. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Our negative 1, negative 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And now our 0, 0. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Our 1, 1. And our 8, 2 is going to be way off of this picture. And so this would be our answer. So remember, the red is the mother function. He helps us move over to the new spot. Our green is the actual answer, the actual graphed black function. Okay? If you have any questions, go ahead, and I'll see you back in class. This will be your homework on Tuesday when you guys come in.